Hey, fantastic friends. Today I am going to talk about what am I going to talk about today? The perks of being a wallflower. So, welcome to the Jerri Berry's Friend-Tastic Library. And then I'm going to do a book versus movie. Yeah, that was a bad intro. Anyways, it's been a while since I've recorded stuff. I took a break from the podcast for a bit and I haven't really posted much. It's just been like not in my vibe recently. And I kind of don't like forcing it because then I feel like it's not fun. So that's that. But I really wanted to make this video for you. So I'm going to find my notes and then we're going to do it. Here they are. We're going to talk about the perks of being a wallflower, the 2012 film versus the book by Stephen Chbosky. I hope I say that last name right. If you're listening to this, Mr. Chbosky, I apologize if I get your name wrong. Anyways, if you have never seen the movie or read the book, you need to do so before you watch this because the book has a very big twist and spoiler in it. So does the movie. So definitely do one or the other before you watch this. I'll wait for you. You can just push pause. And then you can come back and watch this later. So anyways, yeah, I took notes again because I liked that last time. I find that if I like reflect on what I watched and read right after and take down some notes, then these videos tend to go a lot better and I don't like jump around as much. But basically, I watched the movie for the first time ever in 2014 and my husband, who was then my boyfriend, loved it and he made me watch it because he loved it. And the movie is set in Pittsburgh, and that's where I'm from, is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I was very hesitant to watch something that was from Pittsburgh so shortly after migrating to California, but he convinced me and I soon fell in love with it. I think like the only big name person in the movie is Emma Watson, aka Hermione Granger, aka Belle from the live action Beauty and the Beast. I'm sure there's something else she's been in. Oh, aka one of the sisters from Little Women, which I did a Little Women video in the Greta Gerwig Little Women. Neither here nor there. So yeah, the whole premise of the book and the movie is the main protagonist Charlie writes letters because it's supposed to be therapeutic and he's going through a rough time. And yeah, you just kind of hear the inner thoughts of this fresh to high school boy. So he is presumably like 15, I think, maybe 16. I feel like he turned 16 in the book. And he has some mental health issues. So there are trigger warnings for this before I start. This book and movie has some major trigger warnings. The book, my hair is a mess. The book definitely more than the movie has a lot of trigger warnings. So just real quick, let me say those out loud for you. There's trigger warnings for like mental health issues around anxiety and depression. There's a suicide trigger warning. There's also how would you like child molestation, sexual assault on children. I don't know how to say that properly. So just know all of these things come up. If you're totally uncomfortable with that, I will not judge you and I'll send you all the love in the world. But I wanted to say that because this one's pretty emotional. It's a heavy book / movie. So without further ado, I'm just going to go into it. You've been warned because it starts out heavy. So basically in the book, Charlie's writing, the book is written as letters. So every like story starts out with like dear friend, and Charlie tells you a story and then signs it Love Charlie. And he in the book he says, I'm not going to tell you my last name and I'm not going to tell you the city I live in or the school I go to because I don't want you to be able to find me. And he's mailing these letters, but we don't actually know who he's mailing them to. He's just mailing them to a friend. I have no idea who he's mailing them to. I never really picked up on where he was sending them. It just sounded like he shoved envelopes in a mailbox and hoped for the best. He does describe his city as like there's winter that happens there. There's a tunnel that leads to a big city, that kind of stuff. So in the book, listening to it, it did give me like a more East Coast vibe. I think on like the fan things online, they do mention that it could be like Chicago possibly, and there other people did speculate things like Pittsburgh or any of those bigger cities on the East Coast with bridges and tunnels and winter. So but yeah, and that's just how the book goes. And you hear this boy start talking about it, and he leaves the impression that his therapist told him that maybe this would help him, or the doctors told him this could help him get through his first year of high school, because he was in the hospital for a long time, like for mental health issues, after his best friend shot himself. So that's where the first like trigger warning comes in, is the book really lays it in there really hard and fast that his best friend killed himself. His best friend's name was Michael, was Michael. And he has to deal with that. And he had like kind of like a mental breakdown from that. And so now he's writing letters. He's really nervous about high school. And we just follow his life through that first year of high school through these letters. And so from there, we hear that he has, he's not really adjusting well. He doesn't really know anybody. The one person he does know, Susan, which was Michael's girlfriend at the time, doesn't really talk to him. He has an older brother and an older sister, but they're older. They don't really hang out with him. He doesn't really have friends. What else? He ends up kind of befriending his English teacher named Bill. And it's because Bill gives him a C on his first paper and says that you have run-on sentences. And so then Charlie is working on not having so many run-on sentences, even in the letters. And Bill starts giving him like extra books and papers to read and grade, even though they're not actually for a grade. Bill just wants him to write essays on books because he can tell that Charlie's really smart and Charlie enjoys it. And he soon befriends a kid named Patrick. Patrick is a senior, but they're in the same shop class or something like. I'm pretty sure in the book they're in shop as well, and that's how they meet. But it could have been at the football game. Yeah, I think in both the book and the movie, they know of each other from shop class, but they officially meet and become friends at the football game. So, yeah. I must say, the movie did a really good job. Like, this was one where I think you can watch the movie and pretty much get the gist of the book and maybe not have to read the book. But if you want more, then reading the book is good. But it's a really sad book. Like, it's really, really heavy. It's a heavy topic. So, he meets Patrick. He finds out Patrick has a stepsister named Sam, aka Hermione Granger, Emma Watson in the movie. And he instantly like falls in love with Sam. But she makes it very clear that she's like not interested and he's too young and stuff. So he's like stifling his feelings, and he sees a lot of issues with society and his family dynamics and everything. Sam and Patrick introduce him to really interesting music, and they introduce him to drugs. So he's like going to parties and doing drugs and hanging out with them. Not like major, but like high school stuff. He dates a girl in the friend group that he starts with Sam and Patrick, or that he gets added to with Sam and Patrick. He starts smoking cigarettes. I believe this is set back in, I want to say the book was set in the 90s. I'm pretty sure because he's into like the Smiths and stuff. So I'm pretty sure it was set in the 90s. So this is also a different time. So he started smoking cigarettes, that kind of stuff. And yeah, and then there's a big old thing that's dropped on you towards the end, but the book kind of builds to it. So I think one of the biggest differences, really the hugest difference between the book and the movie, and this happens with all books and all movies ever, is that the book just develops everything so much more, right? Because it's like a 12-hour audiobook or an 11-hour audiobook instead of like an hour and a half movie. So obviously everything is developed more. You hear every thought this kid has had for a whole school year in a book, basically. You know, he didn't write every single day, but he's telling you his stories from his point of view and all of his thoughts on everything every single day. So, you know, thoughts on Patrick being gay and how he doesn't understand why people can't just be gay and be okay, and why the like Patrick's secret boyfriend Brad can't just be out and his dad not be mad at him for it. He doesn't understand why his sister puts up with a boyfriend that hits her. He doesn't understand how his brother can not get upset as easily with the family and just do what makes the family happy and make the family proud, because Charlie can't make the family proud. Everything he does is a mistake. That's like, these are all his viewpoints that you hear all day. You hear about his weird puberty feelings and just feeling weird whenever girls make him feel good, and like his first kiss, and yeah, you hear all of his thoughts about like his teacher Bill, and he thinks that his teacher Bill is sad about working as a teacher because he had the opportunity to go do something else but it fell through, and so Bill might go do it next year, but he really likes Bill. So he just talks about a lot of stuff. Like I think even like politics comes up with like Watergate. You know, now that I think about it, this book is very similar in a way to Forrest Gump, where the movie Forrest Gump is just viewing the world from these sweet innocent eyes of Forrest Gump, and he's just sitting at a bus stop sharing his life story and opinions and viewpoints with you. And that's what Charlie does for us by writing his letters. He just has this very pure, like pure, generous, kind person's viewpoint on the world around him as like a 15-year-old boy. And I just love it. I love everything about it. I love the representation of what teenagers go through and think of. I don't think people give teenagers enough credit. I think a lot of people sweep them under the rug and say they're just over dramatic, or they're dumb, or they're not thinking right. And I think it's the opposite. I think they're overthinking everything and overanalyzing everything because their brains are rewiring themselves. Their brains are finally discovering morality and empathy and acceptance and independence. All these things start firing whenever we start hitting puberty and go to high school. Society changes immensely for high schoolers and teenagers. And I kept thinking of myself as a teenager and all the shit that I overanalyzed constantly and all the shit that I stressed about constantly. And yeah, to adults it seemed dumb, but to kids that's their whole world, and to teenagers that's their whole world, and that's where they first learn all of these things. I don't think that the constructs in high school ever go away. We just stop over dramatizing them. And I think just telling teenagers that they should just not worry about it and sweeping their emotions under the rug does more damage than anything. I think seeing their emotions and then having lessons built off of those emotions just works far better. And in Charlie's case, especially since it's in the 90s, he can't really go to his dad because his dad is like, buck up, I'm a man, I never cry, be like your brother Bill and play football. And his mom is just overly worried about everything, and his mom, he doesn't want to worry his mom because his mom is overly worried that he's going to go back to the hospital and be in a bad place again. So he's just left with this teenager with all these thoughts and emotions that he can't really feel like he can get out to anybody except his friends. And this is like, I feel like that's just a super common thing for all teenagers ever, and it's unfortunate. So that's my soapbox on that. Otherwise, the book and the movie were very close, especially like timeline wise. The way things happened were fairly similar. I didn't really have like too many notes on the big differences, other than just everything in the book is way more developed. You really get to know Charlie for who and what he really is. Even his deepest, darkest thoughts are written down in these letters. So there's even a letter where he barely writes and says, "I'm sorry, I'm in a really bad place right now." So yeah, it's really interesting how the author was able to connect so deeply to that and write about it. But the biggest differences that I wrote down between the book and the movie is that in the book, it's clearly set in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I think they do a really good job beautifying the city. Growing up there, I never really liked it, but they do make it feel very beautiful. In the book, it's the city's unknown. In the movie, he calls his, oh, I forgot, Paul Rudd's in it. So Paul Rudd is Bill, but in the movie they call him Mr. Anderson. In the book, Charlie calls him Bill. So also Bill in the movie, Mr. Anderson, Paul Rudd, whatever, he's much more likable and more like aloof in the movie. He's not like a main character, but anytime he's around, you really like him. In the book, he's definitely more off-putting, and Charlie wants to like prove himself to him because he's a little rougher on Charlie because he knows what Charlie's capable of. And then he becomes very kind and caring for Charlie, but it doesn't start out like that. Yeah. And I love Paul Rudd, by the way. Huge fan of Paul Rudd. And actually one of my favorite lines, and I was so happy that they put it in the movie and it was in the book, is Charlie asks him, yeah. So another difference is that whenever Charlie sees his sister get hit by her boyfriend, he doesn't know who to turn to talk about it, and he tells Bill about it. And he says, "Bill, I don't know why my sister, who doesn't put up with any shit from anybody, especially guys like me and my brother and my dad or anything, she's always the first to fight about everything and stand up for herself, why she lets this guy hit her like that and just tell me to not tell anybody and keep it a secret." And Bill says, "Well, Charlie, we accept the love that we think we deserve." And they kept that line in the movie, and I am so happy that they did. In the movie, Charlie does not tell Bill any of that. It just kind of is said as a passing comment. But in the book, it was like a real heart-to-heart moment. And I just love that line so much. It's one of my favorite lines, along with hurt people hurt people. So that was another difference. Let me think what else. Yeah. Oh, another thing is, like, in the movie, I feel like the letter writing isn't as prominent. It starts out with him writing a letter and he's like narrating it. But the movie's like a movie, right? The book is literally like reading somebody's letters. So that was interesting. It was an interesting difference. Obviously, his brother and his sister are way less developed in the movie. They're like barely a thing. Actually, I don't even really remember his brother from the movie. I know that he technically might have been mentioned or was there, but he is very developed in the book. Like, Charlie goes to his brother about like sex, and Charlie goes to his brother about girls. And Charlie is so happy that his brother played for college football or something like that, and he ended up on TV, because then the family wasn't arguing whenever they came for Thanksgiving. Instead, they were watching his brother on TV. So it's his brother drives him a lot in the book, drives him around, takes him shopping and stuff like that. So does his sister. He goes to his sister for a lot of things because his sister is still in high school with him. And his sister, I believe, is a senior, just like Sam and Patrick. So she knows the people that he hangs out with. She knows of them. So he goes to her a lot whenever he's confused about why certain people do things or are mad. Some of the social awkwardness that he feels being a ninth grader hanging out with seniors, he goes to her for. And then she ends up giving him a lot of like gossip and insights about what's said around the school about those people he's hanging out with. So they're both really developed. What goes with that is that his sister ends up getting an abortion in the book. And Charlie goes with her to that appointment and he drives her. So in the book, Charlie ends up getting his driver's license and he drives her to the abortion and stays there with her the whole time. And then they hang out later and he covers for her so that her family never knows that she got it done. So those are just way, way more developed. Michael's death is in the very beginning and it's a little bit more detailed. In the movie, they're at a party and it's after he's met Sam and Patrick and he's at the first party and he says, kind of in passing while he's really high, like, oh yeah, Michael shot himself last May. But in the book, it's like right in the beginning and it's a little bit more detailed where he's like, yeah, me and Michael were best friends. We would always have sleepovers. And I remember this one time we were having a sleepover and we talked about this, that, and the other. And I don't know why he didn't leave me a note. I don't know why he never told me that he was feeling that sad. I don't know why nobody knew. Everybody kept asking me if I knew and I kept telling them that I didn't know. And so there's more detail around Michael's death. What else? There's a really sweet episode with his family where they all watch MASH together, the last episode of MASH, the show. And his dad is like crying at the end, but his dad hides it. So what's interesting too is throughout the movie and the book, Charlie is constantly asked to keep secrets. And that seems to be a main theme as well that's playing on his like guilt, anxiety, depression that's going on, is like his dad doesn't want other people to know that he cried at the end of MASH, and his sister doesn't want anybody to know that she got an abortion or that her boyfriend beats her, and he can't tell anybody that Patrick's dating Brad because Brad's a football player and Brad's dad will beat him up if he knows he's gay, and the list goes on and on of the secrets that people ask him to keep. So it's like that's a whole thing. What else? In the book, Charlie is seen as like way more passive than he is. In the movie, he's seen as way more passive than he is in the book. In the book, they talk about a history of like lashing out or being violent with other people. So in the movie, the only time we really see him violent is whenever there's the big blow up about Brad and Patrick, and he ends up getting into a fight with Brad to defend Patrick over the whole pretending I'm not gay thing. So, but in the book, he ends up getting into a fight with another kid that's causing problems for him named Sean. And I think he mentioned some other issues too as well, but before he had Michael as a friend to back him up. So there's also like a moment where he sees like, I think it's his brother in the book. I'm pretty sure it's his brother Dave that he sees at a party, and he's like trying to have sex with a girl that doesn't really want to have sex with him. And I think he walks in on them like while Dave's getting a blowjob or something from her. So that's a whole thing of like that's like another secret that he has to keep and he feels really weird about because he feels like Dave kind of forced her to do it. So that's like a whole nother thing. I think it was his brother. Dave might have been a guy at a party. It's hard to keep it all straight because it's literally written like a high schooler telling stories. But that was definitely a thing. Let's see what else happened. So, his smoking habit, and I don't even remember seeing him smoke in the movie. If he does, they don't mention it. But in the book, it's a very big deal that he started smoking. His sister wants him to quit. He has to pretend he doesn't smoke around his parents. But he ends up smoking like a lot. He also does more drugs in the book than he does in the movie. Like in the book, they're constantly smoking weed and smoking cigarettes and trying like LSD and stuff like that. And yeah. In the book, there's also a point where he has lunch with Bill, the teacher. Like the teacher invites him to his house at the end of the school year, and he goes to see Bill and his girlfriend. I don't think they're technically married. And they just talk about how amazing Charlie is and how good of a student he is and how much Bill believes in him and how much Bill has enjoyed teaching him and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm sure there might be other things that I'm missing if you want to get really nitpicky, but Those are the biggest things that I could point out from reading it and then rewatching the movie, because I definitely had to go back and rewatch it after watching it in like 2014. So now we get to like the big gigantic plot twist of the whole book and movie that kind of throws everyone through a loop, whether you're watching the movie or the book. And that is that throughout the book, Charlie is constantly talking about Aunt Helen, constantly brings up Aunt Helen, constantly. In almost every letter, Aunt Helen is mentioned. He remembers Aunt Helen saying this. He misses Aunt Helen because of this. Aunt Helen never did this to him, or Aunt Helen would never expect this from him. So in the book, Aunt Helen is like this perfect woman on a pedestal that he has loved and adored. And she died in a car accident. And you find, I'm getting like chillies just thinking about it. So you find out that Aunt Helen died because she always gets Charlie 2 presents, because his birthday's in December, which is really close to Christmas, and usually he just gets presents just like everyone else. He never gets like a birthday and a Christmas. Everybody just gets him presents, and they just call it both. But Aunt Helen was the only one that specifically got him 2 presents every year, one for his birthday and one for Christmas. And on that specific year, I think he says he's like 9. I want to say he was like 9, something like that, maybe younger. She goes to get him a second present and she dies in a car crash. So he blames himself for being born. And again, because we're hearing every thought that happens in his head, even every bad thought. He goes down this rabbit hole around Christmas time because he hates his birthday, because he always remembers that it's his fault that Aunt Helen died. If he was never born near Christmas, then none of this would have happened. If he didn't have all of these mental issues and he could just be normal, his family wouldn't worry about him all the time, and he might have more friends. Or maybe if he would have been there more for Michael, instead of worrying about instead of feeling guilty about Aunt Helen all the time, maybe if he would have reached out to Michael more, then Michael wouldn't have killed himself. Right. So we hear this like really dark letter start to happen where he is just really going down. And I felt that letter so much to my core, because that is like what happens all the time whenever I get into a depression mode, is you go downhill really fast, and it's really easy to keep going downhill and to just stay down there. And then we don't hear from Charlie for a while, and there's a pretty big date jump from the next time we hear from him. And I think it's like after the new year. So yeah, that's what happens with that. But what's interesting is in the book, there's more of a twist. I'm getting there. But what's interesting is in the movie, they don't really develop Aunt Helen at all. We see flashback memories sometimes of her, but we don't really get a whole picture of her at all. And in the book, she's very developed. He talks about how his mom and Aunt Helen would get beaten by their dad, but Aunt Helen would get abused more because Aunt Helen wasn't the pretty one. His mom was the pretty one, and his mom was the perfect one growing up. Aunt Helen wasn't. So Aunt Helen was beaten a lot by her dad. And then I think he even mentioned something about Aunt Helen being sexually abused. And Aunt Helen always dated sexually and physically abusive boyfriends. And then that's why she eventually came to live with them. And Aunt Helen would babysit them anytime mom and dad wanted to go out. And she was so much fun because she would make popcorn and they would watch movies. And she was so cool and he loved everything about her. So her death like really hit him hard. And in the movie, they don't really give you any of that. Aunt Helen's like barely a thing that comes up at the very, very end. And eventually, what's it called? Eventually, we get close to the end of the book, end of the school year, end of the movie, all three. It all happens pretty much the same way. There's a little bit of a difference, but we're getting close to the end of the year. Sam was dating a guy. She broke up with him. Charlie dated a girl for like a little bit and they ended up breaking up because Charlie didn't actually like her, but he got kind of stuck dating her because he's too passive to break up with people. He's too much of a people pleaser and just worries about what other people want. So he didn't break up with her for a long time. So they ended up dating for a while, even though he didn't want to. Anyways, it comes down to the end of the year. And Sam is like, in the book, Sam is like, hey, why didn't you ever like ask me out again, or like try to do these things with me? Don't you want to do these things with me? And he's like, yeah, of course I want to do these things with you. I've loved you since I saw you, but you told me I can't have those feelings. And she's like, Charlie, sometimes you need to do things that make you happy, not what make others happy. I understand that you need to respect me and my boundaries, but you never do what makes you happy. You're always people pleasing. That's why you dated that girl for way too long and ended up breaking her heart. And that's why you let your sister like walk all over you and yada yada yada. So you need to stop people pleasing. Anyways, they start to have like a sexual encounter. So they start like kissing and doing all the things that teenagers do. But whenever she goes to touch his no square, aka his penis, then he's like, whoa, stop, please. Something's happening and I'm not okay with it. And he ends up going home in the middle of the night / the next morning, and he's all whacked out and he doesn't know where is up, and all he keeps remembering are flashbacks of Aunt Helen, and he keeps remembering Aunt Helen trying to touch him there and him saying no, but her doing it anyways and saying that it would feel good. And he just zones out in front of a TV forever until his family finds him, and I think he was like naked or something in front of the TV. And then he goes to the hospital and it all comes clean that Aunt Helen was sexually assaulting or molesting him as a kid. And no one knew about it because his brain had just suppressed it. His brain just loved her for who she was, and then she died. And all he knew was that he missed her, and his brain suppressed all of the sexual assault that was going on. So they had no idea that was happening until he started getting physical with Sam. And then Sam and Patrick come to visit him along with the girl that he used to date. I wish I could remember her name, but she was so forgettable in the book. And they all come to see him, and he just starts to slowly get better from that. And he even brings up, that like the idea that hurt people. Like Aunt Helen was abused as a child, and she was sexually and physically abused, and so she thought it was okay to be abused. And I'm sure that and then he points out, I'm sure there was somebody before her that was abusing her that was abused, and the cycle just kept going, and it's hard to get away from that cycle. And that he hopes that he's the stop of that cycle for his family, because he doesn't want anybody else to have to go through this like he has had to go through this. And it all hits you really hard, and you feel really bad for Charlie because his best friend killed himself. He has to keep all these secrets for people. He definitely struggles with mental health and has to take medicine for it. And then he finds out that he suppressed memories of his Aunt Helen molesting him as a child, and it's just a really heavy book, but it's so worth it. It's so good. So in the movie, the only thing that's kind of different is that Sam is going away and they kind of get physical, and he's like, I gotta go, and he leaves. And he kind of starts spiraling out of control, and he ends up calling his sister, and he's saying something to his sister. And then you just flash forward to him in the hospital, and the doctors are telling his parents what Aunt Helen did while he's in the hospital. And so in the book, it happens more like as Charlie starts to freak out and his family finds him in the living room, and he starts to tell people there while they're like trying to figure out what's going on and calling 911 and all of that stuff. So it's more like Charlie tells his family rather than the doctor telling his family in the psychiatric ward. But yeah, it is a really, really good book. Like, it's a really good book. If you liked the movie, I 10 out of 10 recommend reading the book, just because you get to know all the characters so much more and so much better. The music in the book is so good. I created a playlist. It's the playlist that Charlie gives to Patrick for Christmas. Actually, I think I have it. Let me get it. I'll read it off to you. I also wrote down a list of all the books that Bill has him read because I want to read those too. So he makes this playlist for Patrick that has Asleep by the Smiths, Vapor Trail by Ride, Scarborough Fair by Simon and Garfunkel, Whiter Shade of Pale by Harem, Time of No Reply by Nick Drake, Dear Prudence by the Beatles, Gypsy by Suzanne Vega, Knits in White Satin, Moody Blues, Daydream, Smashing Pumpkins, Dusk, Genesis, MLK by U2, Blackbird by the Beatles, Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, and then Asleep by the Smiths again. He does that on purpose because he thinks it's such a good song. You should start and end with it. And it's so, so cute that he does that. And I love all of those songs except for Landslide. Landslide's never really been a big favorite of mine, but I did create this playlist on my phone, and it does work really, really well, especially whenever you think about the movie and you listen to these songs. They're just really good and hit you all like right in the feels. So I guess if you're a big music nerd like I am, that was a huge difference. In the movie, Landslide is never brought up. They do bring up Asleep by the Smiths, but instead of Landslide, they use the song Heroes by David Bowie, which in my opinion, and this may not be a popular opinion, so I'm really sorry, but in my opinion, the Heroes song is like so much better. So much better. But again, I'm biased because I've never really been a Landslide fan. Am I a Fleetwood Mac fan? Yes, absolutely. Am I a Stevie Nicks fan? Of course I am. Don't be ridiculous. But I'm not a fan of that song. Like, I get it. I know the lyrics are cool. It's like, yeah, there's some things that I just can't really like enjoy listening to, and that's one of them. It's not that I disrespect it. I just don't like listening to it. So for me, replacing that song with Heroes in the movie was like amazing. I also love that they bring up like, and the movie kept it to the time period where they bring up that they can't just like go find music like we can today. Like if you hear a song on the radio, you have to just hope that you can find out who it's by or what the song's even called so that you can buy it, or you have to like record it on a cassette. Like I love that about the movie. So yeah, he also reads a lot of really good books. I don't know if I still have the list of books. Maybe I do. Let me see. Oh, I do. Okay, so these are the books that Bill has Charlie read, or that Charlie is seen reading in the book specifically. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This Side of Paradise, he says is his favorite book whenever someone asks him, but he says it's his favorite book because it's the most recent one he finished. A Separate Piece by John Knowles. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which he says that he's already read before, but I think Bill assigns him to read it, so he rereads it to write an essay about it. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs. Walden by Henry David Thoreau. Hamlet by William Shakespeare. The Stranger by Albert Camus. And The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I hope I said all those names correctly. So both of those lists are in my journal. And like I said, I already have the playlist created that I listen to whenever I'm feeling very moody. And then the books I definitely plan to make like a reading challenge one of these months. Right now, I am really stuck on Harry Potter and A Series of Unfortunate Events. And just before I started reading those, I was really stuck on the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trials. So after I finish A Series of Unfortunate Events and Harry Potter, I may start the Charlie list from The Perks of Being a Wallflower. We shall see about that. But overall, my final consensus of Perks of Being a Wallflower, I don't even know how long this has been going on, but my final consensus is that the book is amazing. If you are needing a book with some good feelings, like if you need a good cry, the book or the movie is amazing. I think that this is a similar case to other ones that I've done, where if you have seen the movie and you don't really need to cry more than you cried at the movie, then just don't read the book. You know what I mean? Like, that's more developed, but do you want to cry more? Maybe not, right? Like Marley and Me. Maybe I'll do one of these like with Marley and Me, because I feel like it was a very similar vibe. Like, did I need to read the book? I don't think I needed to cry for that long. So I think that if you read the book, you don't really need to see the movie, but if you'd like to, I think they do a really good job with the book. I really, really do. I think the casting was really good, and I think the actors did a really good job portraying their characters, and I think they kept things pretty similar and did the best that they could with an hour-and-a-half movie. And yeah, I think if you've read the movie, unless you really, really enjoy books and you really, really enjoy all the triggers and all the cries and all the feels like I do, you don't really need to read the book. So yeah, that's my final consensus on that. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. I love discussing it. If you have other suggestions of book versus movie, let me know. If you just have other suggestions for books, let me know. My TBR is growing on the daily. Coming up next will be, I never posted my June bullet journal setup. I did film it, but I didn't post it. I'm starting to think that I won't post it at all at this point. I'll just post my new bullet journal setup, and you'll see my June and my like flip through of my old bullet journal. Because I also have to set up July as well. What else? I did not read a lot in May, so I wasn't really going to do a May reading wrap up. Because I'm pretty sure the only books I read in May was like The Perks of Being the Wallflower, The Hobbit, and like maybe one other one. So I was gonna just combine May and June. Yeah, May I started a lot of books and then I ended up not finishing them. So that's why I think, yeah, I'm probably not going to do a May reading wrap up. I probably won't show my June bullet journal setup, and we are just going to start fresh with all of that in July, because I am at the end of this bullet journal right here. It is pretty much full and it is very chunky, very, very chunky. These pages look so clean because this is like my daily journal where I write my thoughts and feelings. This is where I've like cut up and markered and pasted and put stickers on it for my planner part. So, but otherwise this is pretty packed. So I'm going to be setting up a new one to go from July to December. So I will definitely be posting a video of my brand new bullet journal setup for July to December. I'll also post a July monthly setup. And then I planned on filming a flip through of this bullet journal so that you can see how I have been bullet journaling as a fairly new bullet journaler. I feel like sometimes I really enjoy watching people's bullet journals in their early stages, even if they're like very professional and aesthetically pleasing now, like Plant-Based Bride or Amanda Rachel Lee. I really love watching their old ones because I feel like that's where my level is. And so I like seeing how they did it back then and some of their more simpler layouts. So I figured I would film a flip through for you guys so that you can see how my brain works and how I plan my life and thoughts and emotions and everything. So that'll come up in July. And then I'll also do my May and June reading wrap up together, since I think I only read 2 or 3 books in May. I'll have to go back and check my Goodreads. You can always check out my Goodreads to keep up with my reading. As of today, I have read the first 4 books in a series of unfortunate events, and I plan on doing book versus show in the way the seasons are set up. So like season 1 on Netflix is book 1 through 4, stuff like that. I am on book 4 of Harry Potter right now. I'm about halfway through. So I plan on doing videos for each book individually because, yep, don't even want to get into that right now, but they each definitely need their own video for book versus movie. Because that's where I'm at with that. I'm becoming a humongous Harry Potter nerd. I am well aware of all of the issues with J.K. Rowling, and I do not stand with J.K. Rowling, but I stand with Harry Potter. So I am happy to deliberate all of those topics with you in any DMs that you want to DM me in. I love you all. I'm sending love and light everywhere. I don't know why I keep whispering to my microphone today. It's just the vibe I'm feeling. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, bye.